Surrender is when the knife slips from your hand and lands in your diary. Khaled Abu al-Ada, before the needle sang, before the lesson bell, I learned another bell, one that lived inside my ribs. Outside the high school, the air tasted of dust and secondhand cigarettes. I held a hash stick between my fingers and felt like a conspirator in a private liturgy. The classroom voice became background noise. The hum in my chest provided a soundtrack that felt more honest than instruction. Men at first, small, polite, plausible, then tramadol, then codeine, then a vocabulary for absence. I learned how to sign treaties with things that never intended to stay. Day 13 in rehab reads ordinary if you only measure by odor, bleach, boiled beans, the antiseptic patience of schedules. We give the day an ordinary name, so shame can be softened for speech. Staff ask the clinical questions. A man from the Gulf tells a joke that does not land, and we smile, so the room will think us whole. They ask for triggers, and I answer an expected litany. Mirrors, hunger, being alone, while the ledger in my head lists other losses. A ring pawned, a father's silence, a number I still remember because it is one of the few things I did not lose. Loss accumulates like currency. I took a car key once to taste authority and left it on the dashboard of a life that would not move. I sold objects and then, without noticing, started selling pieces of time and apology until even contrition became negotiable. A woman loved me the way someone preserves leftovers, hesitant, patient, and I repaid her with absence. When they asked for 30 losses, I stopped at 12 because the rest read like an obituary I was not ready to mail. Football gone, laughter gone, a boy who used to ask the stars questions and still believed they might answer, gone. Between group and lights out, there's a hallway where time limps. A nurse moves like a metronome. We pass the hours like contraband notes. Keep going, brother. Memory comes back in short, unornamented flashes. The Google searches at 19 for pills like courage. The powder at 20 do. That signage treated with my veins, waking in vomit in someone else's bathroom and learning how small death could be. Ritual replaces freedom. Journal, inventory, prayer, breath. Gratitude compresses into a fragile list. Coffee, clean sheets, a morning without lying. And those small truths keep the map of the day from tearing. At night, the building hums. The boy who once sharpened pens into weapons begins, cautiously, to draw doors. One door he leaves closed on purpose, not from fear, but because, for the first time in a long while, he is already where he needs to be. The lock-in. They take your name at the door the way an accountant makes a ledger entry. Neutral, unromantic, final enough to register. The registrar's pen scratches your identity into a file, while you hand over more private currencies. Your keys, your phone, the small consolations you always kept in pockets. In return, a bunk with thin mattress, a white form, a capless pen, and a schedule printed in polite fonts that will shape days into work and quiet into ritual. There is no triumph in this exchange. Only the modest economy of entering a place that will ask less of miracles and more of minutes. The first week is an exercise in domestic discipline. Ceilings become constellations if you stare long enough. The sound of a closing door is a metronome. Small acts accrue moral weight. Lining up for breakfast, waiting for the nurse, folding a blanket with a steadier hand than you mean to. Pride for not using arrives and leaves in the time it takes to smoke a cigarette. A man asks for my clean date and I stumble because I am still learning what the word means in plural. Clean of substance, clean of excuses, clean of the old soft lies that let me bend the truth into forms that fit me better than honesty ever did. There is a mentor who keeps a black Timex that runs 5 minutes fast. He will not preach. He will listen. He has the economy of a man who has watched words fail and learned that listening is the salvage operation left to us. His rules are merciless in their simplicity. Show up, do not lie, be useful. In them, I find a moral grammar, that will reorder my days. He says relapse rarely begins with a pocket of heroin. It begins with forgetting to keep faith with small dignity. He watches us, not with accusation, but with the patience of someone who has learned to wait for people to remember themselves. They hand me a workbook called Relapse Prevention and a sheet with halts circled like a catechism. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. The headings read like weather warnings. We chart our days as if plotting storms. Where am I hungry? When does the loneliness arrive? Which evenings my body gives up and seeks the old kindness of a pill as if it were mercy. The exercises are tedious and true. Draw a safety plan. List 5 people who will answer. Name 10 reasons to stay. And they work because they are physical acts. Ink on paper. Names you can call even when the chest wants to close. Group is where ritual and confession meet. Men tell their small stories, the ones that have a bruise inside them. A man named Kareem jokes in the way men joke to keep terror at bay. Another sits with hands that tremble, afraid that those hands still betray him in shoves and fists. We pass a tissue box like communion. We listen. There is no sermon that outlives the hour. There's only the slow accretion of attentions. Someone remembers your name. Someone remembers your laugh. Someone hands you a cup that is not contemptuous. Respect is not bestowed as a headline. It is earned like change. The Timex keeps moving. So do I. The phrase I learn in a common room becomes my liturgy. Keep walking. It is not a slogan. It is a verb. I say it into the awkward hours, into mornings when my hands search for old comforts, into conversation when silence wants to be a refuge to the past. I say it until the cadence becomes a habit, and then a compass. Outside the gate, nothing is guaranteed. Inside the habit of walking, everything becomes possible. Keep walking. Epilogue. The world beyond a gate does not congratulate you. It contains you, like a city contains streets. Indifferent enough to be honest. Years do not cleanly erase the ledger. They rearrange it into ledgers you can live with. I keep a watch that now runs 15 minutes fast, not from superstition, but from the arithmetic of margin. 15 minutes buys me the time to choose breath over habit, call over silence, an honest sentence over a practice excuse. It is a small talisman and a discipline. Both things are useful. Work is steadier now. The tasks are not heroic. They are the measured labor of attendance. I answer for gaps with a compact honesty that surprises people less and makes me less afraid to be known. There are colleagues who joke about the man who once preferred the back room. There are meetings where I speak, and my voice does not tremble with the old need to perform or to vanish. Money arrives with ordinary friction, bills, rent, a small savings that grew from one deliberate transfer a month. Stability, when it comes, is incremental. It asks less of epiphany than a persistence. Love is quieter and therefore truer. The woman who learns my history learns it in chapters rather than headlines. She asks not to fix but to witness. That is the most careful kindness. We build intimacy in receipts. A return text, a steaming cup left on the counter. The way she notices a threadbare place on my jacket and mends it without big rhetoric. We have arguments about small things, cleaning, the way we schedule time, but the fights do not turn into exits. Habit made us brittle once. Habit now makes us reliable. My mother calls less in the tense, future language she once used, and more in the present. How did the meeting go? Did you eat? These are practical prayers. She visits and watches the way I hand a lemon peel to the compost rather than toss it. The small ritual of regard for things that will become soil. At Eid, she brings the same alokia, and this time I sit at the table and take my portion without bargaining. My father's drawer is less guarded. Silence, once a vault, has softened into conversation. Repair is not total. It is, instead, habitual, a series of small acceptances, repeated. There are nights when the past speaks with an elegant voice. It calls with the syntax of familiarity and proposes ease as if it were mercy. I have learned to treat those calls as weather, watch the storm form, do not invite it in. The safety plan is now a folder on my phone, a list of names, a set of routines, a place to find a sentence that steadies me. The discipline of calling is its own muscle. It strengthens with use. Sometimes a friend answers, and we speak until the weather passes. Sometimes no one does. Then I stand and walk until the night thins. The Timex, the lemon tree, the boy in the Spider-Man shirt. They persist as not quite ornaments, but as measure. I win the Timex occasionally, not as an act of nostalgia, but in memory of someone who taught me the grace of 5 minutes. I check the lemon tree each season. It has learned, the way I have, not to ask for abundance, but to keep trying. The boy appears less as accusation now and more as a litmus. When I see him in a storefront's reflection, I ask whether the face I return is kinder to him than what left. I still carry the notebook. Pages are a kind of map, patches of honesty, evidence of staying. Some entries are elegant, most are not. Many are the small confessions that require no audience. I write to remember the promises I have already kept. I read the letter I folded for the child I was, and am glad to find the same ink. I am trying. I will not leave you. I am here. The words have lost their performative posture and assumed the quiet of contract. There was once a scandal that felt like an island, an unplanned relapse that lasted a night and a morning and left a bruise. I woke with the taste of ash and the old hunger in the throat. I did what we had written in the ward. I called a number on the plan. I named what had happened. I asked for help. The repair was not theatrical. The friend who answered drove across the city and sat with me as the dawn made no promises. The incident did not end the work. It reminded me that contingency exists at the heart of any recovery. That vigilance is not the opposite of peace, but its companion. Writing this now, years later, feels both modest and necessary. The book of my life is not a clean narrative with resolved moral. It is a ledger of returns. I have learned that the narrative I want is not a single triumph, but the capacity to show up to the small things that make up a day. Morning coffee without bargaining, a call returned, a sentence written that tells the truth. The sum of these minutes is not immortality, but an available life. If there's a final lesson, it is practical and austere. Keep walking. The phrase is not ornamental. It is a verb. It instructs pace and attention. It is the movement that makes 1 minute follow another into a life that tolerates itself. I say the words aloud sometimes, in empty rooms and in trains, until they are less admonition than compass. There is no autobiography that converts mistake into virtue without cost. The ledger remains. There are names I cannot erase and nights that do not unhappen. But there is also a margin I bought with small payments. 15 minutes now, then 20. Promises kept in lines of continuity drawn across rupture. The Timex keeps moving forward. So do I. Keep walking.